It has been a big night for one of Europe's poorest countries, Moldova. Their pro-EU president has claimed a second term after a tense election runoff seen as a choice between Europe and Russia. Official figures give Maia Sandu an unassailable lead, with nearly all the votes counted. The final results expected to be declared in the next few hours. Speaking to thrilled supporters, she promised to be president for all Moldovans.
Moldova este învingătoare.
Moldova, you are victorious. Today, dear Moldovans, you have given a lesson in democracy, worthy of being written in history books. Today, you have saved Moldova.
Moldova a fost sub un atac fără precedent pentru
Moldova has been under an unprecedented attack. Dirty money, illegal vote buying, the interference in electoral processes by hostile forces from outside the country and by criminal groups, lies, sowing hatred and fear within our society. Our people have united, and freedom and the citizens have won. Peace and hope for a better life have prevailed.
Maia Sandu's victory comes just 2 weeks after a knife-edged referendum backed EU membership. The former Soviet republic, flanked by Ukraine and Romania, has gravitated between Russia and the rest of Europe. Her rival, Alexandr Stoianoglo, who was backed by the pro-Russian Party of Socialists, had promised a closer relationship with Moscow, but is denied being a pro-Kremlin candidate. The election outcome was welcome news in Brussels. The European Commission President has already sent her congratulations to Ms. Sandu. On social media, Ursula von der Leyen said, "It takes a rare kind of strength to overcome the challenges you faced in this election. I'm glad to continue working with you towards a European future for Moldova and its people." The result will probably be less welcome in Moscow, of course. During the vote, the Moldovan president's national security advisor said there had been massive interference from Russia. The Kremlin denies that. Have a listen to this.
I don't know if there are any direct accusations of Russia interfering in the elections. Russia is not interfering in the electoral campaign of Moldova. We resolutely reject any accusation that we are somehow interfering in this. We are not doing this.
Well, Robert English is the Director of Central European Studies at the University of Southern California. He gave me his assessment of this result.
This is an important victory, but it's not a final victory. And we have to be careful not to cast this exclusively in terms of the West or the EU versus Russia. It's really about the economy, right? Moldova is a desperately poor country, as you noted in the introduction. And what's more than a quarter of the population live abroad. And in fact, it's more like a third, because there's just no work. There's such grinding poverty at home. And the Moldovan economy would collapse if it weren't for these remittances that make up over a quarter of GDP. The point is that this party has to prove, right? It has to reward the voters with substantial economic progress. And that means the EU has to help Moldova much more than it has in the past, or the next election could swing back in Moscow's favor, because, of course, Moscow offers cheap energy, cheap credits, and they're very alluring for a country in such desperate poverty.
In this next vote, as it were, the sort of standout vote that she's just won, it was those Moldovans that have moved out of the country that swung it in her favour. So we are hearing, according to reports that we're receiving, many of those who remain and live in Moldova itself are actually, many of them wanted Russia, a more pro-Russian approach. It will be difficult for her to navigate this, don't you think, in terms of the polarization within Moldova?
It will be difficult. You're exactly right. And of course, the part of the Moldovan population that lives in that breakaway Transnistria region didn't vote at all. So if you factored all of this in, the country is pretty evenly split. And again, the pro-EU party won. It's got another mandate, but it has to prove it's worth it with economic performance, because, their record is also spotty, and corruption has, been rampant in all political parties. And I think that the ordinary Moldovan voter is not thinking in terms of the West versus Russia, Ukraine, all of that. They just want a better life and start seeing some economic development. And the EU has to be much more generous and much more thoughtful in its support, or we'll be back in 4 years, maybe with the pro-Russian result, as we saw, for example, in Georgia recently. The war is not won, and the victory is temporary. It's one battle in a long war to bring these countries to a more rapid state of development and into the European Union.
Interesting, the analysis on the outcome of the election in Moldova.